Did you guys know that today's August 31st, which means it's the last day of August, which means that it's time for my August reading wrap up? Did you know that? Hello, my name is Mara. Welcome back to my channel if you're new. Hello, nice to meet you. Today we're here brought together for my August reading wrap up. Best time of every month, talking about every single book that I read this month, all of the DNF, all of the books that I loved, all of the books that I did not love, and we're just brought together to discuss that one topic, and that is just books. Thank you for joining me here. If you're stumbling in because you were wrapped up in other August wrap ups, stick around. If you are here by your own will and this wasn't just you accidentally falling down a rabbit hole and bringing yourself here, thank you for choosing me. Pick me, choose me, love me. Thank you. I'm just gonna make one quick disclaimer here about the month of August. August was not my month for reading. It really wasn't. I feel like I read a decent amount, but I just was ruthless with books. Like, my ratings and just my thoughts on books, ruthless, absolutely ruthless. I saved a lot of my thoughts about books for this video so that I could really, like, you know, get it out. So the first book that I read in the month of August was If He Had Been With Me. It's by Laura Nolan. This book is basically about childhood friends who grew apart as years went on. The thing is though, their moms are still best friends, so even though they're not like this anymore, their moms are still. Then they're also in high school, so they have their own friend groups, they have their own girlfriends, boyfriends, all of that. They are talking and they get closer again and then realize like they don't like each other's boyfriend and girlfriend. The girl is like having a lot of thoughts, just saying like, you know what, if you were mine, like I wouldn't treat you like this. But she has a boyfriend and he's kind of like, you know what, your boyfriend isn't like very good for you. And she's like, no, he is, we're in love, you don't get it. It's just like a really real story I found about like real high school relationships, real high school situations. Honestly, I think because it was so real, I wasn't loving it at first because I was like, why am I just like rereading all of my past trauma? Like, I don't want this. This isn't fun. Then the ending hit and I was absolutely shook. It immediately took it from like a 2.5 star rating to a 4.25 in like literally a page and a half. It was crazy. So I really like that one. I would recommend it. I mean, there's romance in it, but I feel like it's mostly based on like the actual relationships between people as human beings rather than romantic relationships. Next, I read Behind the Net. Now this book is about Jamie Stryker, who is a hockey player, and he ends up getting an assistant, and this assistant is somebody that he knew in high school and had like a huge crush on. Okay, he was really into her. She thought he was hot and everybody thought he was like this, you know, amazing guy. He was like super popular and hot and whatever, but she was like, oh my god, he would never pay attention to me. But when he finds out who his assistant is and it's her and she shows up outside of his door, he's like, oh my god, I have not stopped thinking about this girl since high school. I already mentioned this is a hockey book. We know how I feel about hockey books. I'm a hockey book stan. Like, any hockey romance book I devour. For some reason though, this one just wasn't hitting it for me. I felt like a lot of people were rating this book really, really high, and everybody rates books differently. But for me, this just was not my favorite. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars, and I'll explain why. Honestly, I really don't even remember why I didn't like find myself attached to this book. I feel like there were tropes in it that I should have loved, but I think just like the delivery of it wasn't my thing. They live together, forced proximity is a big one. Like, he's a good guy. I think I'm just super picky about books, and I think when it comes to hockey romance books, I put them on like the automatic like high pedestal, expect them to automatically be like 6-star reads, and if they're not grabbing me enough, then naturally it's just gonna be lower. I don't dislike this book. I think a lot of people could like it. A lot of people do like it. I just didn't find it fitting for me. The next book that I read in the month of August was a 5-star read, and it was Fourth Wing. I have gotten so many people to start reading this book after I had read it. This book, I did a full video about it. I've talked about it many times this month already, and I will not shut up about it. This book is a fantasy romance book, and it is about a girl named Violet who, I forget what the disease is called, but she basically has really, really weak bones and just a very frail body. Everybody's expecting this girl to die when she ends up having to become a rider at like this war college, okay? So basically when you grow up, you can go 4 separate ways. You can be a healer, work in infantry, you can be a rider, or you can be a scribe. So she had been trained to be a scribe, which basically means she's very knowledge smart with books and history. Her dad was a scribe, and then he died, and after after he had died, her mom was like, actually, you're gonna go and become a fantastic rider like I am. But the thing about her mother is she executed so many people that everybody hates her because of who her mother is. She gets this war college and you have to go through all of these like obstacles really at first to kind of prove your strength, and throughout, I think it's like a couple hundred people end up going, but only like between 50 and 100 like end up living to actually be in this war college. I might have the numbers off, but just for sake of showing how many people die in the process, let's just pretend those are the correct numbers. She has to start off by walking across this parapet, which there's like windy skies and people are being blown off and you just fall to your death. She basically has to walk across this path just to make it to the other side, and the number of people that die in the process is ridiculous. Then she gets to the college, realizes that people hate her, people are trying to kill her every single day, and she's wondering if she's gonna be able to bond with a dragon that's powerful and could save her and protect her, because the whole kick of this story is the quote that says, "A dragon without its rider is a tragedy, a rider without their dragon is dead." In order to live and be a successful rider in this war college, and then in the future in a war, you need to have a dragon. Everybody gets bonded with one, and she's like, am I gonna have a good dragon because I'm really weak? And like everybody's just saying how useless I would really be, and boy does she get a treat. This book was just amazing. Adored this book. Like, I tabbed it up, I had so much fun reading it. It was a really interesting and like clearly in-depth written fantasy book, but it wasn't confusing in any way, and I hadn't seen anybody talk about the fact that it was confusing, so that's a good sign if fantasy isn't really your genre or you feel like you could get lost in it and not understand what's going on. This book is so good, and I have not heard anybody say that they didn't understand what was going on in that book. 5 out of 5, 6 out of 5. Like, seriously, this book was so good. I cannot believe it's real and I have it and I can read it whenever I feel like it. But here's the issue with how good Fourth Wing was. I enjoyed Fourth Wing so much that every single book I read after it sucked. Even the books that I did really enjoy, I was seeking a feeling I got when I read that book, and no book was giving me that feeling. So I was put in a slump for the rest of the month. That was so fun. I really enjoyed that. I'm still in a slump. The next book I read was Once Upon a Broken Heart, and I DNF'd this book. I had been so excited to read this, I couldn't do it. This book is a YA fantasy. It's essentially about this girl named Evangeline. Basically, she's trying to stop a wedding. She ends up going to this prince to like get his assistance and try to stop the wedding. She's just continuing to like bargain with him, and all of these things are happening as a result. I just did not enjoy it. I was really sad to have DNF'd it because I was so excited and I had heard people talk about it and just say how amazing it was. I'd also seen other people that DNF'd it talk about how they thought it was a little bit too YA. I think that was my thing. Like, I went into it knowing it was gonna be a YA fantasy, and like I've read YA books and liked them, so I kind of thought because this was fantasy, like I wouldn't have that problem, but I definitely did not find myself loving that book. And you know what, that's totally fine. Enough people in the world have read it and loved it for me to tell you, like, go ahead and read it. You might love it. I'm hoping it's a situation of right book, wrong time. I think just coming off of Fourth Wing, I was putting such high expectations on all books, and like I said, if they weren't reaching it, it was an automatic DNF. But I really wanted to like this book, so I think at some point I'll try again, but for now, it's a DNF, okay? Next, I read Travis by Mia Sheridan. I loved Archer's Voice. I read that a few years ago, and somehow it's literally right next to me on the floor, and I didn't do that on purpose. But I read this a few years ago, and I really liked this book. I'm gonna angle this down because I'm sitting differently now, and this is just a little bit more comfortable. Anyways, I read Archer's Voice a few years ago, and I loved it. When I saw that there was a sequel slash spin-off on it, I was like, oh my god, I need to get it. So Travis is about the guy Travis in Archer's Voice, but my only thing is, if you're gonna write a sequel or a spin-off on a story, it needs to be better than the first one, especially if the first one was good. If the first one was mid, then the second one needs to be better, but if the first one was good and there really is no reason to like have a spin-off or a sequel, the second one better be so good that no other book compares. And this book I rated a 2.5 out of 5 stars, and it just didn't do that for me. I loved Archer's Voice, like I said, and I liked Travis's individual story in Travis, but I hate the romances that only end up happening like during the epilogue. This book opens up with him finding his girlfriend with somebody else in their bed. Then it turns out the girl that afterwards he ends up meeting and like kind of having a little connection with is the sister of the guy that his ex-girlfriend cheated on him with. So he's like, okay, well, I hate your brother. And she's like, you know what, we're just going through a lot. Like, there's some things happening. I don't like that he does this stuff either, but like, work with me here. Like, I'm trying to keep him under control and he's just not listening. They end up having like a connection, but it just continues to go back and forth to them being like, let's be together, let's not, let's do this, let's not. Like, it's exhausting. And then I guess this is like kind of a spoiler. I'm gonna say it anyway, so if you don't want to hear this, skip like 20 seconds. They literally go the entire story back and forth. Finally, at the end, they end up getting together, but it's not like relief. It's like, honestly, if you guys were doing all that and like couldn't get together, you just shouldn't be together, because you weren't fighting for each other. You were just like, should we not? Like, I don't know. I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. The epilogue was cute. Literally the entire story just ends up happening in the epilogue, and I just felt like it should have been spaced out more and not have been exhausting reading. Next, I read another Mia Sheridan book, and I read Most of All You. This one I also DNF'd. This book, I would go into it reading like trigger warnings, read a little bit of background behind it first. I didn't do that, and then when I started reading it, I was like, what am I reading? It's about this girl who is a dancer, if you know what I mean. This boy basically walks into her room, like at the place, and is like, I want you to teach me how to like do things. She's like, okay, but is like charging him for like these lessons. I don't know. I was just kind of uncomfortable. Like, that kind of trope I just don't like. That's my own fault because I didn't look at that before I went into it. I saw great reviews about it, but that's just not a trope that I like. And there's another book further into the month that I had read and did like that had a trope like that, but not the exact thing. I read The Love Quotient, something like that. I'm good. Like, I don't need that trope. I'm like really okay. So I DNF'd this one. I saw a lot of people write really great reviews about it. A lot of people love it. I think me going in blind was a bad idea. I definitely would recommend looking at it first and really thinking, is this a book that I would want to read? Next, I read the book I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I've been wanting to read this for a long time. And when I saw that she had the audiobook, I was like, oh my god, well, I'll listen to the audiobook. I've shared my thoughts on audiobooks before, and I actually am going to continue sharing them in this video. When it's a memoir or like an autobiography and the author is narrating it, I just find it to be such a different experience, and I prefer that way over listening to like a romance book. I didn't rate this because it's about her life. I found this so interesting, and the things that she was talking about in here that she thought was normal growing up, even as a teenager or somebody in her early 20s, still was like, my mom wasn't doing anything wrong, like this is normal. And then her eventually one day, like, it all clicks and she's like, none of that was normal. Just the way that everything was delivered was really, really interesting, and it wasn't like it was just reading a story of somebody's life. Like, she was actually including quotes and like dialogue. It really made you feel for her and other people in her life dealing with things that her mother was contributing to. I really, really enjoyed this. I would encourage everybody to read it. The next book that I read was, like, I don't know how to introduce this because like it's like a comic book, but I read Heartstopper volumes 1 and 2 because the second season came out and I realized I hadn't read the books. I was also reading this for a video that hasn't been filmed yet. I don't even know if I'm gonna end up doing it. I finally came around to reading that. The show is better by a long shot because it's just so much more emotion being portrayed, and like you can hear the delivery of things. There's more dialogue because a comic book is like a sentence of dialogue. I gave Heartstopper 3 stars. It's a comic book, so it wasn't gonna like blow my socks off. Next, I read Academically Yours by Jennifer Chipman. This is on Kindle Unlimited. I gave this 1.5 star. I was really, really looking forward to this. I was just a little bit let down. Her name is Noelle and the guy's name is Matthew. She's in grad school and he is a professor there, but she's also involved on campus. Like, she works there. She kind of does RA stuff. Like a little bit of an age gap, but they're like 5 years apart. It's not like he's like 20 years older. Some people like that, but he, I think, is 30 and she's like 25. This one I did write notes about, so I'm looking at my phone. I wrote that the internal dialogue was extremely long, and also just that certain scenes were drawn out really long, and they were saying things like down bad, and I just wasn't really with it. There were certain things that were being said that I wasn't a huge fan of, just in the way that it was delivered. And then again, like I said, the internal dialogue was so long. I felt like they maybe had shared 5 pages of dialogue with each other. Everything they were saying was just in their own heads. There was also a scene where they're together and she's asking if he's interested in anyone, and then he starts describing her, and it just gave me that like really terrifying feeling when your guy best friend is like, yeah, I like this girl and you might know her. Like, actually you do know her really well. I read it and just had to like put my phone down and walk away. I couldn't do it. They kept talking about how short she is, and I was like, oh my god, like why do people have this obsession with like saying like, oh, the main girl in this book is like so small and petite and little. She is 5'6". She is 5 feet 6 inches tall. I'm 5'6". I pictured her to be like 5 foot, 5'1", 5'2" at the most. She is 5 foot 6 inches. There were a lot of elements that just reminded me of high school romances and like the feelings you get in a high school relationship. And then I remembered he's a 30-year-old professor and she is in grad school. I just feel like they could have been a little bit more mature. Once they did get together, the rest of it was just constant smut, and I'm not a fan of that either. Because then I'm like, what am I reading this for? Insta-love is definitely a trope in this book. Literally from the start, like as soon as they meet, they have like a cute interaction when they first meet, but it's just immediately like the other person is just like the only thing that they think about, and it's just 0 to 100, and I'm not a fan of that either. The next book that I read was Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I love Sarah Adams books, and this one was just so good. This is a 4 out of 5, and I honestly think it could go up. This is a dual POV romance book, which automatically is just something I'm gonna eat up, but this is about a girl named Annie, and she is on her hunt to find perfect match. Her soon-to-be sister-in-law, who is in the first book in this series, the When in Rome series, they are interconnected books, so you can read them individually. I haven't read When in Rome. I read this one first. I didn't know it was the second book in a series, but they're interconnected, so you don't have to read them in order. Her soon-to-be sister-in-law, Amelia, her bodyguard is like this really hot guy named Will, and she's like, you know what, if you want somebody to teach you how to like be in a relationship, how to flirt with people, and how to like gain confidence in a relationship, have him do it for you. Amelia kind of presents the idea, and Annie's like, okay. Will ends up doing this for her, and he starts getting really jealous when other guys start showing interest in her, because the whole point is for him to just build her confidence and teach her how to flirt and teach her how to approach men and not be scared of them. Then when that starts to work and like guys gain interest in her and start trying to like hang out with her and do things with her and like take her out on dates, he's like, well, actually you can't. No. But it's not like a weird overbearing jealousy. You can just tell that he's trying not to be jealous, but he is, because he likes her. I really enjoyed this book a lot. The next book I read was the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa K. Adams. I got this book for $3.50 at a secondhand bookstore, and that was really the entire reason why I got it. This book is about a Nashville baseball player, which is crazy because I live in Nashville. His name is Gavin, and the whole point is basically that his marriage is going downhill. What's really dumb is the fact that the reason why it's going downhill is because he found out that his wife faked it in bed for their entire relationship and got insecure about it, and then she was like, you blew that up way too much. Like, if that's gonna make you that upset, there's just no reason for all that, then let's just like get a divorce. Then he's like, oh my god, no, like I didn't want to get a divorce. You know, like the consequences of your actions, isn't that crazy? He ends up meeting with his group of guy friends, and they form a bromance book club, which basically is just them reading romance books that their wives and girlfriends love so that they can better understand women and what women want. This book though is just constant back and forth fighting. It's constant give and take. I feel like a carrot's being dangled in front of me, and I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna get back together, this is so great. And then they're like, nope, never mind, they're gonna fight about something stupid. Like, I'm exhausted. How about you guys just go to couples therapy? Why are we forming a fake book club? And then also, I'm gonna do a little spoiler here too, because why not? Skip like 15 seconds. But basically, at the end of the book, she finds out that he's reading romance books to like win her back over and know exactly what to say. And then they just fight again. Next, I listened to half of Collided by Lauren Asher and dnf-ed. The thing is, I thought that it was the fact that I was listening to the book, because I listened to Throttled and did not enjoy that either. Then I realized that it's not the fact that I'm listening to it, it's just the men in this book and in this series that I cannot stand. Okay, I don't enjoy the men in this series, which is crazy because I really do like Lauren Asher's books. But in this series, in the Dirty Air series, I just cannot stand these men. And I didn't like Sophie. I don't like Liam. I didn't like the vibe where it's like she's not like other girls because she wears sneakers. Like, I just couldn't listen to this book anymore, so I also DNF'd this one. This is my third DNF of the month. Like, It's getting ridiculous. Then I read Best Served Hot by Amanda Elliott. Mind you, the last 3 books, counting this one and the next few, I had read for a video, which was swapping my phone screen time for a book for a week. This one I was really excited about, and I even expressed my excitement like when I was picking it out, because I was like, this one looks so cute. I got this one for my birthday. It sounded like a trope I would really, really like. I gave this 2.75 out of 5 stars. I did not like the characters in this book, and the romance plot just was not really there. It's about 2 food critics, reviewers. The guy is named Bennett, and he ends up getting the main girl, who is named Julie, for a dream job he ends up snagging, and they get in like this fight in public that kind of goes viral. And because they're getting some social media attention, and she's a social media reviewer and he does like more professional, well, I don't want to say more professional, because you can definitely like do social media reviews and still be professional, but he's doing things old-fashioned, I should say, where he's writing in newspapers and magazines and things like that. He doesn't really take her too seriously for doing social media reviews, but she's like, you know what, this is my job and we just blew up on social media, so why don't we collaborate and like get some attention on the both of us. They end up doing that, and there's some interactions that are really cute and I think could be really entertaining, and I think this definitely had a lot of potential, but I just think overall they didn't have much of a connection other than just the fact that they both were food critics and just liked going out to eat. I just didn't really see anything there, but that was just my opinion. I would recommend this book. Like, I think people could like it more than I did, but I was pretty excited about it and I was just bored out of my mind. This next book, Finally Mine by Tanya Trozzo. I gave this book 1 star. I was really excited about it. It's a sports romance. It's about this guy named Ethan who plays football for Baylor, and he's supposed to be like the star wide receiver. And then this girl named Lily, who seemingly has had her eyes on him for a very long time. But here's what I thought, okay? I thought things moved way too fast between the characters. They had this really sweet interaction at a party, but then after that, it was like they were just constantly hooked on each other. Mind you, Ethan had a 7-year relationship that he was in, and he was like thinking about Lily a little bit too much for my liking. Granted, it was a toxic relationship, so he was kind of trying to see his way out, and I guess he saw Lily as his opportunity. I also just didn't love this book because it was kind of literally marketed on the back as a sports type romance, where it's talking about just the fact that he's like a star wide receiver, and maybe that was just to show that he has some popularity and people know who he is. There really was not much sports happening in here, and I talked about that in my screen time video. I also just found things to be a little bit too predictable, but then the ending happened and I was like, are we just trying to throw in every single trope possible into this book, or does this have any relevance to the characters? If you guys have read this book, or if you choose to read it, the ending was just so random and like came out of nowhere. I could not believe I was still reading the same book in here. Besides that, something else that I just didn't love, the fact that, like I said, apparently it says Lily DeMarco has had a crush on Ethan Thompson for so long. I don't know if I missed it or if I skipped over it or what happened. I just didn't see that. I felt like it happened at the same time as it happened for him. It wasn't like she had been liking him for so long, and then when they got together it was like, oh my god, thank god, I've wanted this for so long, I've had my eyes on you for so long. I was like, I swear you guys have been into each other literally the same amount of time. Okay, we're on the last book. The last book that I read in the month of August. I'm currently like reading one right now, but I'm only like 3 chapters in and I'm not gonna finish it today, so I'm not gonna include it in this video. It'll be in my September wrap up. But the last book that I read in the month of August was Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. Great way to end the month, especially off of the last few books that I had read, with the exception of Practice Makes Perfect. But it's about this guy named Matt who just went through a divorce with his ex-wife named Elizabeth, and she wound up getting together with somebody that they work with. It's kind of like, what the heck is going on in my life? Am I happy? I don't really feel like I'm happy. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And then one day he sees a girl on the subway and realizes that it's the girl that he was like in love with in college. Then he's like, well, I don't have her phone number. I don't know how to contact her. How long has she been in New York for? So he basically makes this post like anonymously, and it's like got a bunch of like inside, not like jokes, but inside messages, I guess, where if she read it, she would know that he wrote it, and then his number's on the end of it, and he's like, please, if you see this, call me. And I really like this. I'm not a huge fan of second chance romances, but this one was just so sweet because I think they're like late 30s, early 40s in this book. It's just reflecting on like their college romance and taking you back in time to them in college. The flashbacks are a huge majority of the book. It basically gets you caught up to speed on like how they left off, and then the life that they are now trying to like figure out what is going on with themselves. A lot of stuff is revealed, a lot of secrets, a lot of drama. I really liked that. I liked that there were current things that they had to work through besides just the college stuff, because I feel like a lot of second chance romances that kind of have that same setup usually end up them, you know, reconnecting and then they just get back together. Like this one, they still had challenges to get through when they met up again as real adults rather than just college kids now. And I really, really loved it. It was a really sweet story and I haven't stopped thinking about it. I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. I think just because that trope isn't one that I'm normally a fan of, naturally my brain's like, it's not a 5-star, but it could be really close. And that was everything that I read in the month of August. All of the books that I loved, had interesting thoughts about, and the books that I DNF. I had a lot going on this month, so I think naturally the books that I was reading, I was harsher on, because I was like, do I want to spend my time that I know I should be devoting to doing other things, reading books that don't do anything for me? So I figured I would just have to be really honest about them. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, hope you found something fun to read. I didn't have that many books that I was a huge fan of this month, but I hope it was at least entertaining for you. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you aren't, and I will see you guys when I see you. Farewell.